You know, the last book I talked about, I think this is interesting in that as I was rereading this book the other day, I noticed that in some ways, the eschatology so popular in modern day Christianity can be a barrier to conversion. And I know that my book, The Apocalypse Code, has been translated into Arabic, circulated all over the Arab world. And when people read it, they so often recognize that oftentimes the caricature is not the same as the real. In other words, so often people look at a caricature of Christianity or a caricature of the God of the Bible as opposed to seeing the real God of the Bible. And I noticed that this had become a stumbling block as you were finding your way to Christ.
That's right. In fact, coming from a Muslim background and with a Lebanese heritage, and I was coming to faith right around the time of the Y2K bug furor and all that, and everyone was talking about the end of the world and the future, and eschatology was a big thing, and apocalypse was a word on everyone's lips all the time. And so I had seen the depth of the evidence for the Christian faith, both the reliability of the New Testament as a book itself, but also the Old, and the facts surrounding Jesus' resurrection. Your ministry played no small part in that, by the way. So I was hearing all that and seeing the credibility of it, but then hearing also sort of the loudest voices talk about one aspect of one part of the debate of, the end of the world and all this thing. And you heard a lot of people talking about certain people being favored over other people, basically because of DNA. And I remember thinking to myself, if I hear this discussion about God being this God of love and loves humanity and all these things, but he seems to love certain parts of humanity more than other parts, and largely based on this eschatological issue. So that was a stumbling block for me, and it kept me. It didn't keep me from the faith completely, but I'll tell you, it did retard my progress because I really had to wrestle with some of those issues more than I otherwise would have been. And in fact, I think I put in the book a section called Stumbling Over the Right Block. The gospel is a stumbling block and all by itself, and we don't need to put more in the way of people. If you want them to stumble, have them stumble over the right thing. I thankfully was able to get past some of those issues. In writing the book, my goal wasn't to necessarily pick a specific view on end times eschatology, so much as present that really intelligent, well-informed, Bible-believing people have differing views, but this shouldn't be the message, the only message that non-Christians hear. They need to hear the gospel itself.
Yeah, so again, the subtitle is so important, why the gospel of peace must trump the politics of prophecy in the Middle East. I mean, there's first things first. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there are lots of Christians who are very, very dear friends of mine who are Christian Zionists, dispensationalists. I vehemently disagree with them, but I think your point is simply to say that let's not put stumbling blocks in front of people so that they're inhibited from coming to faith in Jesus Christ. And it must have been a great relief for you to recognize that God is not a racist and he is not a land broker.
Absolutely. I think that was a fundamental transformation in my understanding of who the God of the Bible actually is. In distinction, in fact, I would say, to God as I understood him in Islam, with Muslims being, considered the best of peoples and superior in their belief systems because of their heritage. And so the gospel's universality and God's love for all people, regardless of who they are and what ethnicity they might bear, was actually a welcomed relief. And thank goodness that I was able to get past some of the sort of I wouldn't call it tribalism, but at least a pseudo-tribalism that I was seeing in some American evangelicalism, which I was also happy to see wasn't the only expression of Western evangelicalism. And essentially, I was able to see my way to the gospel specifically, and then I could deal with those other issues. And they're worthy of our debate. You wrote a whole book about it because it's a worthy discussion. And I think that it is worthy, but it's not something that everybody should be hearing only or exclusively.
Yeah, I think that's right.